I expect the defense to lean into the theory that someone else, whether it's a foreign government or some powerful person within the United States, wanted Charlie Kirk dead, and that Tyler Robinson is the fall guy. He's just a patsy, and it wasn't really him.
Hello everybody, this is Jakson Buhaj with TMZ. Today I am joined by former federal prosecutor and president of West Coast Trial Lawyers, Neama Rahmani. Mr. Rahmani, thank you so much for joining me today.
Of course, thanks for having me.
So there has been a huge development in the case of Tyler Robinson, obviously the man who has been accused of allegedly assassinating Charlie Kirk. Now the ATF has conducted an analysis of the bullet that hit Charlie Kirk, and the results came back as inconclusive. Now this is a huge development, and I'm wondering what this truly means for the defense.
Well, it's certainly helpful for the defense. It doesn't necessarily clear Tyler Robinson, although I'm sure it's going to feed into the conspiracy theories online that it was someone else, maybe an agent of a foreign government, who killed Charlie Kirk. It's not uncommon for analysis like this to come back as inconclusive. It happens all the time with DNA, sometimes with fingerprints, and even in ballistics. If the specimen, which in this case is the bullet, is fragmented in such a way that it's just insufficient to come with a definitive conclusion, ATF does result in inconclusive findings sometimes. And I know the FBI is going to do their own analysis, and we'll see what those agents have to say. But obviously, it's something the defense is going to take and run with.
How does a result come back inconclusive? Is the bullet just, the remnants of the bullet, are they just refined to absolute grain? Is it dust? Like what's going on with this bullet to where it could possibly be inconclusive?
Whenever you're dealing with a scientific sample, and again, we use the DNA or fingerprint, but really it can be anything. If it's degraded in such a way that the analysis can't be done, it may result in an inconclusive test. In this particular case, whether it's the bullet, whether it's the firearm, the experts are unable to connect the two to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty. That is the standard that that expert would have to testify to in court. So it happens. Certainly not something that the state wants to happen, but it does happen in these types of cases on occasion.
Now, I want to put you in a hypothetical. If you were Tyler Robinson's defense attorney, how would you argue in his defense?
So there's a few ways to defend a murder case, really primarily three. The first is that it wasn't me. I think that's likely the way the defense is going to go in, some third-party culpability defense. The other is that it's an accident, tough to argue in this type of case, that they lack the criminal intent. Maybe it's a manslaughter case or self-defense. It's really, primarily speaking, those three types of defenses that you see in most murder cases. It wasn't me, I didn't mean to do it, or I was acting in self-defense. And you're going to see the defense clearly go in the route that it was someone else. I think the challenge here is, obviously, there's video that appears to put Tyler Robinson at the scene. We've all seen that video. And there's some admissions that he made to his roommate, admissions on Discord that seem to show the motive in the case. So I think those are the two really big legal obstacles the defense is going to have to try to overcome here.
And if you were the prosecutor, how would you argue against Tyler Robinson in this case?
Well, if you're the prosecution, right, you're going to argue motive means opportunity, right? Here's someone who was politically motivated, disagreed with Charlie Kirk. He's at the scene, he had the means and the opportunity. I mean, if you can connect the rifle to him, I don't necessarily think the bullet not matching to that degree of certainty that's required is going to make or break your case. But if you're the defense here, your only job really is to keep Tyler Robinson alive. I mean, this is a very conservative jury pool in Utah. We know that it can be hard to not have a death penalty qualified jury return a death sentence. So what you see in these death penalty cases, and it doesn't matter if it's Luigi Mangione, you saw the litigation, or even Brian Kohberger, the defense will litigate this case for years, not months, but years, to try to keep Tyler Robinson alive. And I think if they can work out some sort of plea deal where it's a life sentence, I think that's going to be a win for the defense.
Very interesting, because Utah obviously is a death penalty state. The majority of Utah leans conservative. Do you think that the prosecution has that working against them in this case, and how likely is it? I know, obviously, you don't know the jury members, but how likely is it that they will vote for the death penalty in this case?
It is likely, but if you're the defense, you just need 1 out of 12. So I always say 8% is that magic number. So whether it's a conspiracy theory that someone believes in, or you find someone who feels sympathy for Tyler Robinson, by all accounts, he did come from a good Mormon family. That's certainly that cuts in the defense's favor. Even some of the most horrific murders in American history, there have been some jurors that have been hesitant to return a death sentence. Probably another recent example is the Parkland school shooter, the worst school shooting in American history. Two of those jurors didn't find that Nicholas Cruz there should be sentenced to death. So I think it's a different calculus when you're defending a death penalty case. I don't necessarily think that the defense here thinks they can get an outright acquittal. But again, even a life sentence would be a win. So I think that's where you see the prosecution and the defense focusing their attention.
Now, I know you mentioned conspiracy theories briefly just now, and I'm wondering if there are any details of this case that stand out to you as maybe a little bit weird.
Well, it's certainly the most politically charged case, certainly in recent history, maybe in American history, aside from maybe the prosecutions of Donald Trump. You have Charlie Kirk, who was certainly an outspoken political figure. This murder appears to be politically motivated. Whenever you have the President of the United States and now the former Attorney General of the United States and the director of the FBI all simultaneously posting, tweeting on Truth Social, social media, X, about a case, that makes the case very unique. It's certainly something that doesn't happen. Obviously, the president has asked for the death penalty to be imposed. The Utah County prosecution, they decided to impose the death penalty or seek it very quickly. So I think people would be naive if they're divorcing the law from the politics in this case, because again, it's not something that you typically see. Now, with respect to Charlie Kirk and his political beliefs, obviously he was very outspoken. So there are people who believe that some of the people he was speaking against had a motivation to kill him and not necessarily Tyler Robinson. So there's a lot of rumors out there on social media. I'm not going to add fuel to the fire, but I would be, again, remiss if I didn't acknowledge that there are a lot of people who believe in these theories. And if one or two of them ends up on that jury panel, it can make or break this case.
Obviously, there was a statement that came out from investigators right after the assassination took place, to where when Tyler Robinson was up on the roof, he disassembled the weapon, got down off the roof, and reassembled it again. And are inconsistencies in this story, such as that one, going to, play a role in the defense's argument in this case?
I think so. If you're the defense, in any case, it's defense lawyering 101. You want to attack the investigation. You want to say it was sloppy, it was a rush to judgment, right? You had some inconsistent statements made related to the firearm, where it was, whether Tyler Robinson's prints were on them. So those are the types of things that you're going to argue that this was a rush to judgment. They got the wrong guy. And this is something that defense attorneys argue in every single case. The real killer is actually out there, and that law enforcement has failed the community by failing to find him or her.
And what is the likelihood that we're going to see the defense lean into some of these online conspiracy theories to further their argument?
I expect the defense to lean into the theory that someone else, whether it's a foreign government or some powerful person within the United States, wanted Charlie Kirk dead, and that Tyler Robinson is the fall guy. He's just a patsy, and it wasn't really him. I'm not necessarily saying I believe that argument, but I think that's the defense's best argument. So expect them now, especially that this ballistics report came back inconclusive, to lean in and go all in into that argument.
Mr. Rahmani, you've been absolutely fantastic. Thanks so much for joining me.
Of course. Thank you for having me. Appreciate being on.